Why would the Department of Defense classify Anthropic, the one AI company with a seat at the table inside the military's most classified networks, to be a national security threat? What does this classification mean to you, and how do you prepare? This is what we're covering today on Upstream Risk. So let's analyze this through my upstream risk methodology. We're going to look at the players, who's involved. We'll look at their motivations. What do they want and what must they defend? We'll look at their moves. What actions will they take? And most importantly, we'll look at what this means to you so you can prepare now and defend against issues before they arise and hit your risk register 6 months from now. So, taking a look at the players. Of course, you have Anthropic on one side, and you've got the Department of Defense on the other. You also have an entity called the Federal Acquisition Security Council who will oversee this conflict and make determinations. You have the rest of these contracting companies that do business within the federal government called the Defense Industrial Base. And then lastly, you have all the other countries, all the other governments out there, particularly our adversarial countries like Iran, North Korea, and most importantly, China. So those are our players we're going to look at. So within the motivations, we'll start with the Department of Defense. It's pretty obvious here, as we mentioned earlier, and if you followed the news, that the Department of Defense has a very aggressive tone to them these days. They want to become more lethal. They want to have that intimidation factor. They want all the tools in their toolbox to fight battles, to defend the national security structure that we have here in the United States, and truly become the greatest military in the world. And to do that, they need all of these new technologies, new systems. They need to adopt AI. They need to adopt and build new weapon systems and the like. So that's all their motivation, but it's also what they must defend against. They must defend against any kind of atrophy of their lethality, anything that will prevent them from moving the needle forward and becoming more and more lethal. So I think that's pretty clear on what the Department of Defense wants. As far as Anthropic, as the next player, Anthropic, of course, is a business, and they want to do business, and they want to earn money and drive revenue and manage their stakeholders and all of that a normal business does. But they also have this mission and values that they must stand against, and this really becomes the core of the conflict. This is their defense. This is what they must not give up, is their core values of democratizing AI, making it available to the world, to better humanity in a number of ways. So they've stood on that ground, and that's their hill that they're willing to die on. The Federal Acquisition Security Council will breeze over briefly. Their motivations and what they will be doing is essentially overseeing this. They are they're a mitigator in this conflict. So what they will determine will set the course of action in the future. They should be acting as an independent body here. So what they want to defend against is any sense of preferential treatment and or anything to that nature. So moving on to the next actor in all of this is the Defense Industrial Base. And I want to spend a moment here to talk about this. You may not have heard that term if you're not doing government contracting, particularly with the military. But the Defense Industrial Base is essentially a generic term that just covers all of the contractors, all of the companies out there that sell services and technologies or products to the military. This can be any company producing anything under a contract that the military has bought. And the Defense Industrial Base, they want to maintain their business. These are thousands upon thousands of companies, large and small, that really rely on the spending power of the military to keep their revenue numbers up, to meet all their financial goals, to employ their staff, and to drive their businesses forward. So they want this to have minimal impact on their lines of business. They want to maybe observe from here to see what's going to happen and how could this conflict potentially impact their ability to do business in the future. And lastly, and here's where I think it might be most important, is these other countries, particularly the adversarial countries like China and North Korea and Iran, who are observing how there is this internal conflict between Anthropic and the Department of Defense, and how that could impact what the goals and outcomes are. So they may be looking at how can they leapfrog all of what the Department of Defense and the military achievements are, and how they are accelerating their technologies. And if there is this conflict that's slowing that down, there's an opportunity for them to slide forward and to produce more lethality than the United States can. So we've met our players. We've talked a bit about their motivations, what they must gain and what they must defend against. So let's look at their next moves. Again, we'll start with the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense's motivation here, of course, is to maintain that superiority, that lethality, that state of the world where they are the most feared military across the globe. And so what they need to do is to ensure they have all the tools in their toolbox to do that. This conflict with Anthropic is becoming a challenge for them to adopt those tools, to adopt AI as one of those tools. And what they are doing is being hyper aggressive here in their negotiation tactics to put pressure on Anthropic. And by threatening to assign them the supply chain risk label as a national security threat is the nuclear option, to be honest with you. This goes far beyond what we've seen in the past of pressures on companies to change their terms of service, to increase what they're doing within a contract, or provide new items within or outside of the contractual agreements. So they've jumped from 0 to 100 here. And it's not unheard of in the Trump administration to take these quantum leaps forward in negotiation tactics. So they've put their foot down. They said, if you don't do this, then we're going to essentially kill all of your ability to do any business within the federal government. And so if they continue down this path, their hope is that Anthropic will buckle. There are a couple other options here for them, for moves that this could be an empty threat, which I truly believe it is. So their other option is to back down from that, and once they have driven Anthropic to the negotiation table, take that threat away and really have a more reasonable discussion on how they can become a better partner, how Anthropic can be a better partner with the Department of Defense. Anthropic, their moves here are really one of two, as I see it. They either completely buckle to the demands of the Department of Defense, take their mission and their goals and their values as a company and throw them away, and just say, fine, whatever you need, we're going to do this, because they have determined the threat of becoming a supply chain risk has greater impact on their business bottom line than perhaps their mission and their values as a company. I don't see that happening. The other option here is they choose this hill to die on. That this is a fight that they know they want to take, and as a massive company with a lot of legal leverage here, they may have a fight worth fighting. So, as I would see it, the move here would be to push back and understand that this is most likely an empty threat, that there is much higher risk to the Department of Defense labeling them as a supply chain risk than they are as a national security threat. So, what that basically means is really, how does taking Anthropic off the table as a supplier impact the greater lethality of the military? Now, remember we talked about the defense industrial base, and I will get to their moves here in a moment, but the defense industrial base is those thousands of other companies that are doing business with the military, and many of them are adopting AI tools and methodologies into their services that they're providing. Many of those tools and services are based upon Claude and Anthropic's AI systems. So the moment Anthropic is labeled as a supply chain risk, legally, none of these companies can provide those services any longer. Anything that has Anthropic or Claude embedded in them must be removed. So we're talking hundreds, if not thousands, of other services and contracts that exist have to be completely reworked, maybe canceled. Many of these other tools in the lethal toolbox are going to be removed. So the Department of Defense here, Pete Hegseth's move is kind of a self-inflicted wound, if it goes this far, to where he wants to punish Anthropic for not playing nicely on this $200 million prototype contract. And to do that, he's going to potentially cause upheaval across the entire defense industrial base. And it could pull the rug out on all of the other tools and technologies that the military relies on, particularly anything new that's based on AI. So Anthropic's move here to hold pat to fight this battle gives them significant leverage. And what I would predict happens out of this is that Anthropic says, fine, declare us the national security threat, put us on this, but you realize all of these downstream effects that are going to happen. And then the information, that risk comes up to the Federal Acquisition Security Council. Remember, they are the ones who oversee this conflict. They are the kind of the mitigator in this divorce. So what they will potentially look at is the body of evidence and say, what is the true threat to national security that Anthropic comes with? And is that threat greater than the potential loss of these other contracts? So if you're following along here, the chances are the impact to the military is far greater. The risk is far higher to declare Anthropic a supply chain risk than it is that Anthropic actually is a national security threat along the lines of China and Iran and North Korea in those companies and those tools that they provide and are using to attack us as a nation. And that leads us to the defense industrial base. What are their moves? Well, I see them partnering with Anthropic for the very reason that we've discussed, that their contracts and their bottom line is at risk as well. Now, again, we're talking thousands of companies, millions and millions of dollars in contracts, in products and services provided to the military. So if the defense industrial base partners with Anthropic, the weight of that far exceeds this threat that Pete Hegseth and the leadership of this administration are trying to put on Anthropic. And lastly, the adversarial countries. Again, what are their moves? Right now, I see them taking two moves. One is to sit back and observe, see how this fight lands and where this goes, but at the same time also accelerating their internal adoption. Because as we talked about earlier, what their intent is here is to leapfrog all the capabilities that the United States has around AI, particularly in the military. We are in a arms race with these countries around their AI tools and their systems. This is, akin to the nuclear arms race that we had decades ago. Thankfully, we're not blowing up nuclear weapons this time, but we are using AI, which has some potential future outcomes that may be significant. So, looking at all of these moves, what does this all mean? Well, for you, if you are a defense contractor, if you are a company that produces AI tools and services, particularly if you are doing business with the military or with the federal government and are included in that defense industrial base, here's what you need to do now. Number one, you need to take a hard look at what is behind all of your tools and services. Take a look at that architecture. What is relying on Claude and Anthropic? Can you refactor this quickly to use other AI models and services should this conflict get to the point where Anthropic is removed from the supply chain? Number two, talk to your government counterparts, talk to your contracting officers, talk with your project leadership in the government, and ensure that they are aware of what's happening and the risk and impact to your specific delivery and your contract. They can then help push this up the chain and say to higher and higher leadership that their contract is mission critical, that these tools and services cause greater harm to national security should they be altered or removed. Put the pressure up within the government. And three, is start looking at other ways that you can potentially hedge your bets. Where else can you do business if the acquisitions within the military come grinding to a halt around a lot of this AI adoption? I've spent 25 years doing government contracting, mostly within Homeland Security and the military. And here's what I'm seeing as trends is a lot of these contractors are shifting into state and local education contracts. They're looking at other civilian agencies, things that are a little bit more stable. So you may want to start thinking about how do your tools and systems apply to other industries, other agencies within the government. Embrace yourself. So prepare now so that in the future, if this comes to a head, you can make quick actions. This is how you adopt that upstream risk methodology. Look at the stories today, understand what moves, minor moves, and conversations you can have now that mitigate your risk before it implodes on you months from now. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something. Let's check back in a few months and see where this goes. And hopefully you gain something from me. Thanks for watching. Please check out more on Upstream Risk. Thank you.